The Winter Palace, the Hermitage, which used to serve as the main residence of Russian Empire Tsars, is today a world-famous museum containing over 3 million works of art. It is a true temple at the heart of northern Palmyra, as it's referred to in St. Petersburg, a city where every inch of land refers to a great name in history, be it of emperors and patrons of art, poets and writers, or artists and architects. One of these great names is of architect Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli. The Winter Palace is one of the greatest creations of this remarkable representative of Russian Baroque. An Italian by birth from a long line of architects, he came to St. Petersburg when he was just 16 years old, and it was here where he became the great architect who built the grand palaces in St. Petersburg and its suburbs. The Winter Palace was erected in 1754-1762 on the order of Elizabeth Petrovna, the daughter of Peter the Great. These walls bore witness to 8 crown-bearing owners in their years of service as the Tsar's official residence. Indeed, the palace interiors, as the specialists claim, are in their own right notable pages of Russian history and remarkable monuments of architecture and art. Then, during the second half of the 19th century, the Hermitage transformed from the emperor's private art collection into a public museum open to all visitors. Its first opening ceremony took place on February 6, 1852. The Hermitage. In the beginning, it fully corresponded to the meaning of its title as a place of seclusion. Even the great Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin had to receive a special permit to gain entrance. Today, this makes it quite a historical paradox, as nowadays it is one of the most visited places in the world. The Hermitage has now existed as such for over 250 years. The date of its official foundation is believed to be 1764. This was the year when the first collection was purchased, including 225 pictures, among which were the works of great European artists. Thus, its collections have been being built up for 3 centuries, and along with countless great masterpieces of the West, its expositions also contain the ancient treasures of the East. There are few museums in the world where such a great quantity of unique exhibits linked to Uzbekistan are stored. Today we are going to show you collections from the pre-Islamic period exhibited in the Hermitage. The major part of this collection is constituted by the archaeological findings from the ancient kingdoms of Bactria, Sogdiana and Khwarezmia. Taking into account the scale of this collection connected with the history of Middle Asia, we'll be sharing with you the most unique exhibits and most remarkable archaeological findings. This immediately begged the question of how can it be that here in St. Petersburg, so far from the places where these works were created, there are such significant collections of ancient Oriental art. The earliest collections were acquired thanks to the efforts of enthusiastic antiquarians. The first ones to come to serve in Middle Asia in the 1860s, 1870s were Russian officers and the representatives of the Russian intelligentsia. The Hermitage collection is rich in antiques and probably one of the richest among any museum in the world, resulting from objective historical reasons. A tremendous role in the creation of the Hermitage's collections was played by archaeological expeditions to Uzbekistan territories. These included expeditions made by Russian Eastern Studies specialist Vasily Bartold, Vasily Vyatkin and Mikhail Masson, who had dedicated their lives to discovering ancient cities and monuments here since the beginning of the 20th century. From the middle of the 20th century, remarkable discoveries in the sphere of archaeology have belonged to Uzbek scientists Galina Pugachenkova and Edvard Tveladze. The main aim of their research was to uncover and study the artistic legacy of the previous epochs. All items exhibited in the Hermitage are critical for the proper perception of the ancient and early medieval culture of Middle Asia. The earliest works on display at this exhibition from the territory of modern-day Uzbekistan are coins, gems, terracotta and bronze plastic artworks. This small bronze sculpture from the 4th, 2nd century BC was found in Tashkent Oblast, the Humsan settlement. Can you just imagine how ancient our nation is? This piece was purchased by the Hermitage in 1924 from a private individual. All items are displayed in the halls of Hermitage according to the historical and cultural regions which existed on the territory of Uzbekistan in ancient times. According to antique sources, in the 8th, 7th centuries BC, the Bactrian kingdom was in power. A highly developed civilization had been living there since the Bronze Age. The territory of Bactria, later referred to as Toharistan, stretched along the Oxus River. This included the lands of southern Uzbekistan, northern Afghanistan and eastern Turkmenia. In the legendary Avestan text there is a line about Bactria, a pure land with highly raised colors. Figuratively speaking, those colors were the flags of the great Cyrus, the founder of the Achaemenid dynasty, and of Alexander the Great, who spent 2 years of his life in Middle Asia from 330 till 327 BC. Yes, this is an amazing story. The march of the Greeks and Macedonians so far inland to Asia left a deep imprint not only in the history, but also in the memory of the people of Middle Asia, as well as the people of Iran and India. The image of a two-horned Alexander was very popular in the East. This exhibition has two portraits of Alexander of Macedonia. They were created in antique times, and they were created, as is clear today, in the imitation of Greek sculptures. The details of these sculptures are very close to those we can spot in the figures. In particular, the peculiar turn of Alexander's neck, his whole image. If we next refer to the prototypes created by Lysippus, we can definitely say great likeness. This is especially true for the early images. Alexander the Great was actually portrayed with a specific turn of his neck. As it is widely known, he had his neck injured during a battle when he was still young. Also, his haircut and the outline of his eyes are quite peculiar. The image of the king of Macedonia had been portrayed in Middle Asia for centuries, but with time, images that used to be closer resembling portraits transformed into the image of a godlike young man. The creation of terracotta statues became widespread closer to the end of the 2nd century BC. As a rule, they were first formed in a mold, after which they were finished with a chisel. The traditional feature of small statuary from antique times was covering figurines with engobe, a special mix of thin clay with red-brown hues. Specialists argue that terracotta statuettes were the miniature copies of honored gods. These are the gods of the Zoroastrian pantheon, along with the supreme god Ahura Mazda. Here you can also see images of the herald of Ahura Mazda. He can be recognized by the peacock in his left hand. The statuette of the Great Mother Goddess dates from the end of our current era. During the Hellenistic era in Middle Asia, she was portrayed with hands crossed on her breast. And this one is the goddess of fertility Anahita. We can recognize her by the lily or tulip in her hand. Anahita, which means strong or spotless, later started to be seen as the daughter of the supreme god Ahura Mazda. The most active center of terracotta sculpture for almost a century was the sizable town of Sogdiana, Afrasiab. The earliest of these sculptures were the fragments of vessels with relief images of faces. It used to be considered a widely popular talisman in the antique world, a form of protection against evil. The medieval image of the monster Kitibuki in the form of a lion also originated here. The terracotta sculpture of Afrasiab used a lot of images of weepers. This exhibition still contains fragments of these figurines. In ancient times, music was regarded as a heaven-born manifestation and accompanied a lot of religious ceremonies. Thanks to the fact that the funds of the Hermitage obtained the collections of Boris Nikolaevich Konstalsky, Nikolai Ivanovich Veselovsky and Mirza Bukharin, the terracotta collection of the State Hermitage Museum is now one of the largest in the world. Bactria started blooming in the Hellenistic epoch. Roman philosopher and historian Justin wrote, "Bactria is a country of 1,000 cities." The Kushan Empire was one of the greatest empires of those times, along with the Roman, Parthian and Chinese empires. During that period, certain crafts entered a phase of rapid development, such as pottery and bronze casting. Active external and internal trade led to the mass mintage of copper, silver and gold coins. Tetradrachmas with the image of Alexander the Great were in use, as well as silver coins with the image of the goddess Athena riding a quadriga drawn by golden elephants, and dinars with the image of the most powerful king of the Kushan Empire, Kanishka I. The collection of the later period holds tetradrachmas from Khwarezmia and the coins of Bukhara rulers. During the Kushan epoch, Buddhism starts to spread in Bactria alongside the more traditional Middle Asian Zoroastrianism. The earliest Buddhist cult center in the Middle Asia was in Karatepe Monastery. It was located on the territory of present-day Uzbekistan, close to the border with Afghanistan. The King's Monastery was the name given to the complex of caves and above-ground structures decorated with sculptures of clay and Ganj and also themed pictures. This is a piece of capital with the image of Kuber god. This is a remarkable example of this style of sculpture. Kuber is the god of abundance, wealth and well-being in Hinduism and Buddhism. According to Hindu tradition, he was portrayed with elongated earlobes. He was also decorated with necklaces and massive bracelets. Apparently, Kuber was the central character of the sculptural composition that used to be placed in front of the entry to the dining room of the Buddhist temple. The Hermitage collection also has an outstanding monument from the 2nd-3rd centuries AD called the Iron Frieze, surrounded with Lashakanthus leaves, an ancient and unknown, yet talented sculptor, depicted musicians playing the lute, drums, harp and cymbal. Researchers claim that all these characters are inhabitants of heaven, who are taking part in the emergence of Buddha himself after a chain of regenerations. This unique musical ensemble is an example of a mixture of local Greek and Indian motifs in Kushan art. Some fragments of these frieze were found accidentally in the waters of Amudarya. That was in 1932. After another year, during excavations in Termez by the archaeological expedition headed by Mikhail Masson, the remaining part of the sculptural composition were discovered on the riverbank. The excavations proved that these frieze had decorated the sanctuary of a Buddhist temple situated 18 kilometers outside of ancient Termite in present-day Termez. On one of the stone walls found later, an inscription was discovered that read, "The place of the gods." The Iron frieze has been displayed in the Hermitage since 1939. It was delivered to the museum on the order of the government of the Republic. The Hermitage collection exhibits works created in Khwarezmia from the Stone Age to later periods. The main archaeological works of Khwarezmia were carried out by the expedition headed by Sergei Tolstoy. In the late 30s, this was the largest expedition on the territory of Middle Asia, due to which some amazing discoveries were made. These are the fragments of the wall painting and sculpture from the Toprak Kala settlement, the largest dynastic center of Khwarezmia and walled town with a citadel, temple and palace. The unique pieces of sculpture, such as the head of the spouse of Vazamar, the ruler of Khwarezmia, used to decorate the so-called Hall of Kings. This is the head of a prince. It is also known as the red head. As you can see, it is larger than life-size. Note how well the painted eyes, nose and headband on his curly hair are sculpted. In this very palace, there is also the Hall of Warriors. The Hermitage collection holds 2 clay heads with massive features and a dark complexion. Researchers claim that these are the fragments of larger figures. sculptures of male and female torsos with fruits of pomegranate in their hands have also been preserved, as well as pieces of the composition with the head of a fallow deer, a pheasant, and a picturesque image of the tiger's head. All these works date from the 2nd to the beginning of the 3rd century. However, this exposition also has even more antique objects. Khwarezmiya is a region where a significant number of ossuaries related to burial traditions have been found. This sculpturesque ossuary in the shape of a sitting man dates to the 3rd century BC. It was put together from fragments found in the area of Koikril Gan Kali. Items of clothing are of particular interest. However, it is amazing how skillfully the master sculpted the head with its semi-spherical helmet and large eyes and nose. The question remains who was portrayed on such ossuaries, the deceased himself or the god patron. Some ossuaries were decorated with themed compositions such as this Sogdiana ossuary of the 7th century. Here we can see fragments of ossuaries with exquisite architectural designs. At the Afrasep settlement, this unique specimen was also found, with its cover decorated with a male head making a grotesque facial expression. In the middle of the 20th century, one of the most interesting archaeological monuments of Uzbekistan was opened to the public, the Varakhsha settlement, which used to be the 3rd largest town in Bukhara Oasis. This is a reconstruction of the Palace of Rulers. Varakhsha gained world popularity thanks to certain unique findings there, including the carved Ganj cladding of the Palace of Rulers and the monumental paintings of the Red Hall. The opening of such a grand monument of early medieval painting became a real sensation. Varakhsha has been called the Pompeii of Middle Asia. The painting, made using mineral paints on dry wooden plaster of over 9 meters long, impresses with its monumentality, vibrancy and composition. These are the scenes of a hunt with noble cavaliers for wild and mythical animals. Large, half-naked figures of horsemen in turbans are depicted on a vivid, almost velvet, red ochre background. They are all wearing pearl necklaces and bracelets. This exquisite painting is made quite skillfully. There is nothing in excess here. Apparently, the ancient painter had impeccable taste and a deep sense of harmony. During the Arabic conquest, this unique wall painting was seriously damaged. The painting was brought to the State Hermitage in 1954, and restoration works on the masterpiece were started almost immediately. The Hermitage has one of the best collections of medieval Oriental silver in the world. In the 6th century, in Sogdiana, there already existed schools of terafts, where the secrets of creating silver dishes were passed from teachers to students. The silver of Sogdiana was richly decorated with gilt and relief carving ornaments. Here one of the most often encounters animal motifs, like on this jug with the image of a fantastic camel with wings, or the symbol of the Bukharhudat's dynasty. It is surprising that these silver dishes were practically never found in Middle Asian excavations. Silver dishes from Sogdiana and Khwarezmiya made their way into the collection of the Hermitage from different places. This proves the era's broad trade contracts. Middle Asian works of art were distributed by caravan routes in various directions, and the silver of Sogdiana was highly valued both in the west and east. It was exchanged in many places for furs and silk. These silver Khwarezmiyan dishes with the image of horsemen and the four-armed goddess were found in the second half of the 19th century in Perm Oblast. This dish with the image of a goddess on a mythical animal was found in Dagestan and purchased by the Hermitage in the early 20th century. Ancient sculptures and paintings. Rare coins and small sculptures of pre-Islamic period and early medieval silver are all outstanding examples of ancient Uzbekistan art, which were destined to survive their creators for a long afterwards, or better said, forever. This has been the Treasures of Uzbekistan Culture in Museums of the World project. This has been your host, Shahnoza Ganiyeva. Thank you all for your attention.